That way you get enough to make it. Looking good. That's nice. That's really nice and tight. That's good. Awesome. That looks great. I'll see you on the ground. I'll see you at the bottom.
Okay, can bracing and cabling save my tree? What is bracing and cabling? So there's many factors to think about when it comes to bracing and cabling. The reasons why you'd want to use it for a specific tree in a specific situation. The safest bet is always going to be to remove your tree. So anytime you have an arborist out to take a look at a tree, all we're really doing is we're assessing the amount of risk. So basically what that is you as a homeowner have to decide what is the acceptable amount of risk. So what that means is what's your threshold of risk. So if you have a tree that's out in the middle of a field and you have nothing parked underneath of it, then the risk is really low, because if that tree fails and it falls, it's not going to damage any type of property. And so there's no insurance claims, nothing of that matter. So let's change that and say that you have an oak tree over your driveway and you're parking your Maserati underneath of it. So of course you're going to want to mitigate that risk, because if the limb breaks, it's going to go ahead down on top of your Maserati and cause an insurance claim. What's the risk and what is the acceptable amount of risk? So if your acceptable amount of risk is 0, you don't want to have any risk, then removal's your best bet. But there is ways to brace and cable trees so that it can minimize the amount of risk. The reason why you would brace a tree is because it has a defect. So if your tree has, for instance, included bark, that's where the bark grows through the middle of the tree, and you have two trees that are sharing the same space and the bark is through the middle of the tree, causing a weak point where it would like to split. So what you're going to do is you're going to brace the bottom of the tree together using lags, and then with the top of the tree, you're going to go ahead and cable that as well. So there's two different types of cabling. There's static and dynamic. We like to use Cobra cabling, and the reason why is because it's non-invasive. You don't have to puncture a hole through the tree and put the bolt through the tree, creating a wound where borer beetles can get in and all types of other infestations. We like to use Cobra cabling when possible. Another option is, say you have a tree that has a compromised root system and it's leaning towards your house. Well, a lot of times we can install down guy, and what that does is it anchors the tree so that if it does have failure, it'll swing sideways and miss the house, or it's going to minimize the amount of damage that it'll have when it does happen. Well, if you look into a lot of places like California where they have a lot of legislation against removal of trees, they use a lot of bracing and cabling down there, and sometimes when those trees fail, it's pretty catastrophic, because you know when it falls, it's pulling large swaths of the tree with it. If you have a tree that's standalone, or that it's far enough away from property, or that the amount of risk is minimal, being that there's not a lot of people going in and out of that area at one given time, or there's nothing being parked underneath that tree at any given time, then cabling and bracing is great, because it's going to prolong the life of your tree substantially. It really can. Another thing to keep in mind on with guying trees is that if we're going to install guys for the root system, that it's going to be there permanently. It's going to be something you're going to have to see all the time. It's never going to be something you can remove, because once you brace an older tree like that, they're not going to grow any more roots to kind of stabilize it. It's just going to be kind of a permanent situation. It's kind of an investment. It can be relatively expensive also, because you're paying not only for the price of the cabling, you're also paying for the man hours to install it. So typically what we do is we'll go 2/3 the way up the crown of the tree, and we'll install a ratchet strap or some come-alongs to pull the crown together, so that way when we install the cabling and release it, then it has a nice amount of tension on the cable. And dynamic cabling is great because it allows the tree to move and sway like it normally would in the wind, but when the force of the wind is high enough, it'll kick in and stop it from being able to exert too much force on the limb. And it also has the ability to absorb some of that impact from the wind with the dynamic dampeners installed. So typically cabling is not something that you can just set and forget and walk away from. You're going to have a routine inspection on it. Once a year is preferable. That way, you can make sure that the cables aren't girdling and that there might not be any defects. A lot of times with the steel cabling, with the wind moving and whatnot, it causes degradation on the cable and they can fail. That's another reason why we like the Cobra cabling. It's ropes, it's a little more flexible, and you don't have to have that much of an issue. But there is photo degradation. That's where the sun kind of burns the ropes and breaks down the integrity of the rope. But you know, that's something that we should inspect every year. So long story short, when you look at the factors, can bracing and cabling save my tree? Yes, it can. It's going to be an ongoing situation if you want to. It's not going to be 100% certified that it's going to stop the tree from failing ever. It's just going to minimize that potential. Okay, so if you thought this was helpful, go ahead and drop a like and subscribe if you want to see some more future videos coming up.